Attention all personnel.
Sorry.
Attention. This is the chief.
While there is a drill emergency in Toshi's building, I'll just wait for him to have his background silent. This is something that we don't anticipate when we run a webinar like this, but bear with me. So I think. So I'll just give Toshi 30 more seconds. I think I'll do the acknowledgement of country just for the sake of, time. So we'd like to acknowledge that we are hosting this virtual meeting, on the land of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and acknowledging obviously the traditional custodians of the various land on which we all work today and are present today, and obviously the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people participating in this meeting. We are obviously paying our respects to elders past, present and emerging, and we celebrate the diversity of Aboriginal peoples and their ongoing culture and connection to the lands and water of New South Wales. So I think I can see Toshi smile, but he's still paying attention to what's going on. So give us another minute and we'll be all yours. Toshi will be starting this presentation, and then Elijah will run through. So on the agenda today, we've got obviously the welcome that we've done, and I'll leave that to Elijah now.
Well, very good morning, everybody, and great to be seeing so many faces joining us for this afternoon's presentation. Look, just while Toshi,
I'm back, guys.
Oh,
I'm
he's
so
back.
Sorry about that.
Wonderful. Over to you, Toshi.
Forgive me. It's the joys of having a live broadcast. We've just had a test for our fire alarms. But look, I am back and wanted to say today we'll be walking you through some background as to what it is that we're currently doing to support the sector. Obviously, do a bit of a deep dive around the partner projects and how you should apply and what we're looking for. We'll give you a chance as well to hear directly from one of our recent partners who secured funding under this program last year, and we'll give you a bit of a sense as to how it's worked for them. And we always think it's best to hear straight from the horse's mouth about their experience working with us, and hopefully we look to replicate that with you as well as potential applicants. So why don't we jump straight into the next section. So what I wanted to do was, just while I have your attention, touch on a couple of developments in the international education space. I think it's important to call out some of the action that the work is currently undertaking to support our beloved international education sector. And I think one of the things that you may not have picked up but has been released in December is our international education recovery strategy that Minister Ayres released in December of last year. And essentially, over the next 4 years, we've been allocated about $20 million to foster the growth of our international education sector and rebuild stronger than we have been. This is over and above the more than $20 million that was set aside last year to support international student welfare during the pandemic. So our recovery strategy has been based on our industry consultations, which we conducted throughout last year. And really what we heard from the sector was how critical it was to start bringing back our international students. And clearly we've had a lot of success in that space, bringing back our international students in December while the borders were still closed. And that has firmly helped to put New South Wales back on the map. We've seen our international student numbers onshore grow by 28,000 students since the borders reopened to them in mid-December, and expect to see that number continue to rise over time. We'll continue to support returning students through our digital channels, making it very clear what are the things that they need to do and follow in order to return safely and be welcomed back into our communities here in New South Wales. Also, clearly, with the work that's happened and the damage that's been done to our reputation overseas, it's really important for us to be doubling up and doubling down on promotion and marketing. So we're spending a lot more of our budget towards restoring our reputation overseas. For us, this is very much about sending a message loudly and clearly that New South Wales borders are reopened, Australian borders are reopened, and we are welcoming our international students back. And for us, it's also about protecting not only our core markets, but opening up new markets. So we were in Dubai recently as part of the World Expo. And there is a lot of appetite there from the Middle East and North African region to see Australia play a greater role in supporting their skills and education needs. So a lot of opportunities around the world, and we're actually opening a series of new offices and we'll be placing education focused roles in these offices to support growth out of these areas. So we've got someone who has started in Indonesia and are currently recruiting in India, and we'll also hope to have someone start by the end of the financial year in Latin America, so in Santiago and Chile. So these are all things that are underway to support the sector, capture those opportunities overseas. Student experience continues to be an important part of what we're doing, as does the broader ecosystem development. And for us, that's about fostering those articulation pathways, building those links with industries, and of course, supporting our tech sector to help our providers reach those students overseas through transnational education and other flexible modes of delivery. So I encourage you to hop online and download a copy of our International Student Recovery Strategy. It's available on our website. And I think as well, we've provided hyperlinks as part of the partner project application process. So really invite you to engage with that strategy and work with us on helping us to rebuild stronger than we were. Next slide, thanks. Just a little nod to the team that makes the magic happen. So Study New South Wales is about 12 or 13 staff and wholly committed to supporting you as providers and as international students to make the most of our opportunities here and to regrow that pipeline of international students and support students. So keep an eye out for us at events. Reach out to us if we can ever be of assistance. As I say, we're all committed to supporting you rebuild better and stronger. Next slide, thanks. So just touching on a couple of the activities that we've been doing to support international student welfare. Clearly, it's been a hard time for our international students, and which is why the government has spent more than $20 million on international student welfare in the last year. This was of course headlined by the temporary crisis accommodation scheme that we delivered, helping thousands of students find free accommodation while things were tough during the lockdowns as well. We partnered with Food Bank and handed out tens of thousands of food hampers, worked with the Red Cross on direct payments to temporary visa holders, and of course continue that strong relationship we have with Redfern Legal Centre on providing free legal support for our international students. We did launch as well a new intake and referral service with the Sydney Community Forum. I wholeheartedly encourage you to refer your students to that service if they are in need, whether it be food, accommodation, legal issues, problems with their landlord, whatever it may be. We encourage you to get your students to connect with this intake support service, and there are further details on our website. And we can, of course, chat the links to those who are interested in the messages. So, and of course, we'll continue to work with students and with providers to deliver face-to-face and virtual events to support our students. As I mentioned, we've really doubled down on our digital and virtual engagement to make sure that we can support our students overseas. So keep an eye out for a new initiative that we'll be launching in the coming weeks, our virtual student hub, to make sure that our students are engaged, can connect at a peer level and as well at a community level and support the community integration. We'll continue to push out new content and new support mechanisms for our international students, both onshore and overseas, and work with, of course, other partners like agents and providers in market to promote the state as a study destination. As I mentioned, the new bodies that we're putting in our offices overseas in Indonesia, India, and Latin America, as well as China, will also provide offshore support to providers in market, connecting to those commercial opportunities, but also helping to promote the state as a study destination under the umbrella of New South Wales. So that was just a quick whip around to give you some insights into what it is that we are doing in this space at the moment. As always, I encourage you to connect with us via our digital channels, and we'll have a bit of a slide around those at the end of this presentation. But I will now invite Elijah into the conversation to give you a little bit more of information around the partner projects, which of course we're all here to talk about today. So thanks for your time and your attention, and I look forward to working with you.
Thanks, Toshi, and good afternoon, everybody. Once again, good to have you joining us. So, look, what will follow is I suppose a bit of an exposition on the key components of the partner projects program. Towards the end of the presentation, you'll see a slide, and we'll share it with you that will link you to all of the key resources when it comes to these programs. So the objective today is really to familiarise you with the big ideas and the core components of the program, which we hope and anticipate will spur some further discussion, some questions, and some great ideas as well. So look, a little bit of an overview of the program. This is what the partner projects is all about. We're all about co-funding projects that are delivered by industry partnerships. Since its inception in 2014, we've actually invested over 2.4 million across 61 projects. And the really exciting stat about that as well is we've attracted $8.4 million in industry contributions as well. So we co-fund projects that are delivered by partnerships across the sector, and as we'll get into a little bit later on in the piece, there's a diversity of partnership types that you might be contemplating when you're thinking about delivering one of these projects and receiving partner projects funding for it. But in the main, we're talking partnerships between providers, businesses, and community organizations. So long as there's a focus in there on international education, then we're open to reviewing all manner of partnerships. And this year, for this round, we're delighted to announce that we've got funds of up to $165,000, including GST, available for projects. All right. I do encourage you to review some of our current projects that we're working with for the 2021-22 round. We've got a diversity of initiatives on the go in partnership with the likes of Isana, who is currently developing a lived experience toolkit, which when you see it, it's going to be I suppose a powerful resource that really brings to life the experience of not only students but other professionals across international education. We've been working with UTS on a project called AusLeap, which is a powerful program that's connecting international students with some really rich and rewarding volunteering opportunities. And we're also doing some interesting work at the sector level with the likes of the Ligon Group and ICEA. And you'll be hearing from Varsha from the Ligon Group a little bit later about their experience as part of the Partner Projects program. So please do explore these. We've got descriptions of these projects up, as well as summaries and highlights from some of our previous funding rounds. You will see that there is a diversity of ideas in there. There's a diversity of different initiatives that we've been happy to partner with and co-fund. So some of our previous focuses are here. So this is a breakdown here of the types of outcomes we've supported in funding partner projects over the years. Everything from work integrated learning opportunities, supporting international students in regional areas in New South Wales, cost of living, welfare, projects to develop initiatives that simply connect students with the community. We know how important it is to really plug students into that sense of place that comes with studying here in this state. But also importantly, we've thrown our support behind initiatives to help the sector. Whether that's by, gathering market intelligence or assisting with the development of strategy. For this year, we're particularly mindful of these areas. And as we've outlined in the guidelines, we're looking at giving favourable consideration to projects that touch on these areas. So that's supporting the growth of international education in regional New South Wales, creating work integrated learning opportunities by connecting with industry, and any other emerging international student welfare or well-being issue. Look, the need across the international student community, especially across the last couple of years, isn't something that that I need to tell this audience about. But we know that there's been emerging issues, there's been emerging needs that form part of the international student experience recently, and so we'll be looking for projects that address those as well. All right, but look, that's just a little bit of an overview of the project, the objectives, what it's all about, what we've achieved in the past through some of our co-funded partnerships. But I'm delighted now to introduce Varsha from the Ligon Group. Varsha is with one of our current project partners, the Ligon Group, and Varsha is going to share us a little bit about the New South Wales student source, and take some questions. But at this juncture, I'm going to hand to my colleague Lorraine, who will tell you a little bit more about what's about to happen, and introduce some of the questions and discussions. Over to you, Lorraine.
All right, everyone. I'm spotlighting Varsha as part of that presentation, and I'll just speak in the background. Varsha, first, can I say thank you so much for joining us today. I think it's going to be very beneficial for everyone in this session to kind of learn the ins and outs, and how we work together on the project that you led, which is the New South Wales Student Source. And I guess to start with you, I'd like to maybe give you a 1-minute pitch to say, who are you, which organization you're part of, what is your role, and how did you contribute to that project? And then after, what I'll do is I'll ask you a bit of a few questions, and I've got a few shortlisted, but I think your answers might complete them as we go. So over to you, Varsha.
Thank you, Lorraine. Thank you, Elijah. So my name is Varsha Devi Balakrishnan. I'm the education analyst at the Ligon Group. So the Ligon Group we call ourselves International Education Nerds. We're an international education consulting firm. We exist for the sector. All the work that we do is really to bring forward key insights and interesting information that will help the sector put in international students first, because we understand that international ed exists for international students. A bit about myself is I was a previous international student myself. I previously came from Singapore, and I've since graduated and joined the Ligon Group. So the project, the student source, actually stemmed from us trying to understand what international students were thinking during the pandemic, because things were moving so quickly. We couldn't rely on surveys. Students were really surveyed out. They weren't responding. And so we started looking at conversations online in a very manual manner to understand what students were saying. And this took a lot of time and effort. And then when we saw this grant come up, it was really a chance for us to trial and test our idea and get some funding to really put it to use and build that out a bit. Before I jump into all the details, I think, Lorraine, I'll hand it over to you for questions.
Thanks, Varsha, for that. I think what's really interesting, and I was hoping that you would mention it, was that you're coming from a lived experience of being an international student yourself, and this is what we try to always put at the center of what we do. What are the experience of the international students in New South Wales, and how can we improve that, as mentioned by Toshi and Elijah as well. So I guess if we want to talk about the application process, can you tell me what was it like for you, and what do you think made your application successful? Elijah touched on, some favorable, kind of some projects that we think would be more beneficial for students. But what about you? Like, what was it to put your application in? Do you have, like, how were you planning ahead? How did you get support from other organizations? I guess I'm kind of curious in hearing more about that.
Yeah, of course. When we saw the application, I think we really sort of identified a gap in information that existed in the sector, around about a mismatch of messaging that was going out to students and the way it was actually being received by students. So we saw that and we did a deeper dive into what actually is happening here. Is there a lack of understanding, or is there a lack of information? That's why the messaging being put out in a good faith and all well meaning wasn't quite being received in the same manner by international students. So I think my point of view is, having been an international student, I understand why they weren't receiving it in the way it's supposed to be received. So that really formed the basis of us planning as to how can we turn this into something that the sector can benefit from? How can we productize this in a way that it helps international students? Because end of the day, that's what we want to do, but it also helps the sector better understand international students. And I think when you look at the application form, it clearly asks you what are the gaps that you are going to address, and highlighting that was something I think made our application stand out, because we did a bit of research and we saw that this wasn't really being spoken about in the way that we were talking about it.
Brilliant, thank you. I think what you're talking about, research and seeing if you've got actual facts backing, what you're thinking in terms of doing and setting up as a project. Just to touch base on what's kind of like the experience of working with us this time, and kind of the grant and the project delivery period, like how have you delivered the project so far, but also how do you report on your activities as part of the project? And if you can give us a bit more information on that, I think that's going to be great for people attending to know that as well.
Yeah, I think the way we started off is we had a kickoff meeting, and so I on my hand already had the milestones planned. So I think going into the meeting, having milestones planned and a clear agenda of what you're going to achieve for the 12-month period of the project. And I think I was really lucky because the NSW team is so lovely to work with. We were in constant conversation, and anytime we needed to tweak things as we go, there's a lot of moving parts. It was an open platform for me to go to New South Wales team saying, hey, we're delivering this. Sometimes we delivered stuff early because we knew that that was something that would be of value to New South Wales at that point of time. We were able to do that. So in terms of project delivery, we had key milestones, but it was also quite fluid in terms of achieving those milestones. Everyone knew what was going to be done when, and if there was added benefit in doing that a little bit earlier, we would always endeavor to do that as well. But I think really just speaking to the New South Wales team and, jumping on a phone call or email, or I think we've done multiple Microsoft Teams meeting at this point. Yeah, that really helped us because we were constantly in the know of what the other person was going to do.
Okay, brilliant. Yeah, I think like touching base on that, you mentioned, delivering early, being fluid, achieving kind of this milestone, which is when you look at the application process, which Elijah is going to tell you a bit more after, but the Smarty grant platform that you use, you actually put the milestones in there and some kind of information. So that's really definitely helpful. And I think from a project management side of things, obviously we rely on the partner project to do the groundwork, but we're available to guide you and to talk to you about the things throughout the project, as Varsha said. Now, Varsha, talking about the viability of the project beyond the grant period and the impact of the partner project funding on being able to stand this project up. How did being a recipient benefited this project and your organization? And I think I'll have one more question to you after that, and then we'll be done.
Great. So in terms of what we got out of the project, I think it really allowed us to trial and test something that we were doing in a really manual manner, to be able to then get access to doing it in a much broader state-specific manner. I think we really saw the benefit in doing that. And also, we were able to see the value that it was adding to New South Wales and build on that. So the New South Wales Student Source is actually part of a wider product that TLG has now created called the Social Source, which really brings forth a new understanding of being student-centric in understanding students and putting out messaging. So really, the New South Wales Student Source helped us develop a whole new product. And also, we have now in the process signing up with all the Study Australia partnerships and Australia as well for them to have this for the next 12 months. So that's really given us, sector communications. We've been visible to many stakeholders in New South Wales, which we are extremely grateful for. And in the Austrade SAP partnership, I think having New South Wales that has already trialed the product for us, having them be able to vouch for the product and its ability to do what it's meant to do really helped us get this product up and running in terms of building it up to a brand Australia level. Yeah.
Awesome. I think you kind of answered to like my last question, which was, what's the future like looking for you? Maybe, like I wanted to actually for you to touch base on the Study Australia partnership, but you've done that. But
too excited. So sorry.
That's all good. That's all good. What I like is you mentioned the projectile, like doing the centering the product on the students, so student-centered product, but you're also a service provider, and then it's just about crafting that product to make sure that the service that you're providing to other people is actually answering their needs and readapting at the time, as you touched base on being flexible earlier. Is there one more thing that you want to tell us about this project? Is there we've got I'm just looking at my run sheet, and we've got 5 more minutes that you can share your experience and so on, or maybe some tips that you want to share with potential applicants that would like to put something in. I know we tend to, there's always people doing a lot of things, and like we tend to procrastinate until the last 2 weeks of the application. We're doing this session very early. The applications are going to close by the end of June, but I guess it's what's available is you're able to go on Smarty Grant and have a look at the form that is available there. You can have a look ahead and kind of work on your answers and work on the other organizations that you're working on. But I'll leave it to Varsha to kind of like give you the tips that she would, if it was you a year ago, what would you have liked to know? And then maybe, talk about the future as well, but you already touched base on that. So
yeah, I think the one thing is fine-tuning. We had an idea, but it took us a while to fine-tune that into really answering the questions in the application form as clear as possible, because the idea might be in your head and you understand what you want to do, but when the application is being read, they won't know what's in your head. And then the other thing is really getting your partners early, like getting all the forms that you need from them and understanding what the partners are going to contribute in terms of in-kind support and all of that. Get that done early, because that's something that we sort of think that we can do it because we know that we'll partner with them, but then working out the fine details actually takes a bit of time. So that's something that I would provide as a tip. Get that done early so you can really focus your time and energy on, outlining what actually you're gonna do with the grant money. Yeah.
Brilliant, Varsha. Well, if I can invite you to stay on throughout the session, and then maybe if we've got, I can see we only had one comment, so I'll just remind everyone to put questions in the chat if you've got specific questions. Please be aware as well that if any questions is not answered and you prefer to have like a more private place to ask that question, you can send it to our email address, which is study.newsouthwales@investment.newsouthwales or nsw.gov.au, but I'll put that again in the chat. So just make sure you check the chat, and if you want, to ask questions. Now, what I'll do is I'll pass it on back to my colleague Elijah, and Varsha, I'll stop putting you in the spotlight, but I might spotlight you again towards the end of the session. Over to you, Elijah.
Wonderful, thank you, Lorraine, and thanks very much to Varsha as well. It's always fantastic to hear about one of these initiatives that we've partnered with, that we've supported, becoming a sustainable project moving forward. So thanks so much again. So look, I'm just going to step you through some of the nuts and bolts of the process now. Firstly, being the key dates which you can see in front of you, and then we'll proceed on to the application process itself. But I can't do that without first, I suppose, reinforcing some key ideas from Varsha's comments there. And in what follows, please keep this in mind, that you will be at a great advantage in terms of engaging with this process if you communicate clearly, often and early about the details of the project. Get those conversations happening with your partners and your stakeholders early about the deliverables, about what it is you're trying to achieve, about how it is that your fantastic idea aligns with your objectives, but also those of the Partner Projects program. But clearly, often and early. If you write those three things down, you are a lot less likely to go wrong. But let's have a look at the road ahead in terms of this particular round. So applications are open, and they will be closed on the 6th of June, followed by an assessment period spanning June and July. So that gets us to August for the announcement of projects, and really for the kickoff of the project that you're proposing. But do make comment to us if you have any questions around that timing. And then we expect the projects will be delivered between that time and the end of June 2023. So that's the road ahead. But to bring it back to the near future, let's talk about the application process. Firstly, with a view to eligibility, right? So the first thing I'll note, and it's linked in this particular slide and at the end of the presentation, is that all of this information is contained in the Partner Projects guidelines. Okay, so your first order of business as an applicant, I would suggest, would be to read that from cover to cover, and then of course be in touch with your partners, and of course with Study New South Wales if and when you have questions about the guidelines. But here's what we're looking for in terms of eligibility. Right, so applicants must either be an education provider or an organisation that has a focus on international education, that has an interest in the sector and in the experience and the welfare of international students. Organisations that apply for funding must meet these pretty simple criteria as well. Okay, so we need evidence, obviously, that you're a legal entity and that you're operating in New South Wales. And we'll use your ABN to conduct those checks, which means you must have an ABN and or be registered as a not-for-profit organisation or a charity. You need to have been operating for at least 2 years and be able to demonstrate to us that you've got the appropriate insurance cover for what it is you're looking to do. Right, now to move on to some of this information about the partnership. So applications must include at least one partner. Right, so it will be, for those of you on the call, I'll venture an assumption that you will be the one, you'll be the person driving the application process. But please keep in mind that the project must have at least one partner that you can talk to us I suppose in a substantive way about their contribution as well. right, which brings us to the following point. So each partner must be integral to the ability to deliver the project. So what we're looking for there is, well, what is the thinking behind this partnership? Why is this partnership going to be high impact? What is the specific combination of your organization's capabilities and those of your partner that are going to be expressed through this proposed project? You need to be able to give us an indication up front of A, whether, and B, how your own funding is going to match that funding for which you're applying through the Partner Projects program. We're looking for both your monetary contributions as part of that, as well as your in-kind contributions. Now, last but not least, and rather importantly, applications must be for either new projects or new elements to existing projects. And as part of the application process, you'll be prompted on providing some more detail on just how this is either a new project or really specific in a clearly measurable way, how this is building upon and creating something new in the context of an existing initiative or piece of work. All right, so that's the starter, right? That's the eligibility criteria that allows you to proceed with the proposal for your project. Now, here's what we're looking for in your project proposal, in the substance of your application. Okay, so first of all, we would like an overview of the project and its relevance to the New South Wales education sector, and along with that is objectives that are linked to our strategic priorities. We've heard from Toshi a little earlier on in the presentation about our focus on the recovery of the education sector within New South Wales. You'll see that the guidelines, of course, come with some more information on that strategy. So really, what we're looking for is those links, right? So how does the envisioned impact of this project help us further our goals for the sector there? Supporting that, we're after a detailed budget, outlining those requirements that I mentioned just a moment ago in terms of outlining how you will spend the funding, and also outlining the manner of your co-contribution. Okay, now Varsha a little while ago in her comments talked about milestones. And she mentioned that it was quite early on in the piece that her group, her consortium, had a clear idea of what the milestones and deadlines were. So we'll likewise be looking for those up front at time of application. So we're very interested in the objectives of your project, and we're also very interested in the timing of your project, and how you'll roll this out between, say August this year and the end of July next year. We will, of course, be asking for a risk assessment, and finally, a letter of support from each of the project's partners, right? Detailing the quantum of their proposed contribution in cash or in-kind support. Now, something I'm aware that has I suppose slowed things down in previous years for applicants is that the letter of support is rather general. It certainly provides an endorsement of the project, but it doesn't get into any further detail about how this particular partner will contribute to the project. So my advice to you is, when you're seeking letters of support, that you actually ensure that we get into, I suppose, the nitty-gritty about the amount and the type of contribution moving forward. I can see some questions starting to pop up in the chat. Just a reminder, we are seeing those, and we will get to those in due course. So be assured of that. Here's the kind of language that we're looking for in terms of the objectives of your proposed project. I won't spend too much time on this. I think I'm speaking to a group with a pretty good level of familiarity with SMART goals and SMART objectives. But do use this as a guide for enumerating upon the objectives of your project. So we are looking for a certain level of specificity when it comes to what you're proposing to achieve, how you will measure it, and what will be the criteria for success. Now, I encourage you to think about that last one, you know, in a particularly detailed way. So when we're looking at the applications, we'll be looking for a measurement of, well, how many students is this project going to reach? What will be the audience size? I mean, what will be what's the number we're looking for in terms of reach, in terms of impact? Okay. Now, we've got, in addition to what I've outlined just a moment ago, some resources up here for you. Now, when we share our materials with you, you'll be able to click through and view these. We've included, obviously, the guidelines. We've linked you to the correct place on our website, where you can view some of the previous funding recipients and you know, have a look at the types of projects that they've rolled out. There's some supporting information here around how you can use Smarty grants to lodge your application and work on that. And there's actually a preview for the Smarty grants application form in here as well. For those of you who are not familiar with Smarty grants, it's the system we use to collect applications for this particular grant program. So it's linked on the partner projects section of the Study New South Wales website. Of course, it's linked here in this presentation, and it's simply where the application form for this program sits. So it's through Smarty grants. You'll be answering questions about the objectives of your project, about your budget. You'll be uploading any key documentation, including the letters of support for your partners. But really, all of the instructions are readily accessible through the links that we have here for you. But at this point, that is the introduction we've been wanting to run you through to the Partner Projects program, to its objectives, some of its processes. But we really did want to maximize the amount of time that we had for the audience to ask some questions. So it's over to the audience, I suppose, via Lorraine, for any questions.
Yes, so before we go and do a question and answer, I will be launching a poll just in terms of data for us. So I'll just, you should be able to access it and see it on your screen now. We're just interested in knowing whether you've, you know, heard about the student partner projects before, and also if you've had applied for any grant scheme, like government grant scheme before. So even though you have not had any experience with Smarty grants, you might have gone through that before. So it's just for us in being able to shape more the second delivery of the second information session that we're going to do. And we're also very curious to know if you're in New South Wales or in Australia. Now, the first question that I'm going to be asking both Elijah and Varsha, so I just need to put Varsha back on the screen, is if I go back to the chat and the first one, I will go to in order of relevance. I know there's also a question about Sri Lankan student. I will ask that a bit later. and that might be a Toshi answer. But for now, let's just focus on the partner project. And the first question was, Varsha, what is your tip to get partners and involved with your idea early? So I'm just trying to find Varsha. So Varsha, if you're able to speak, I'll be able to put you on spotlight. There we go. Thank you so much. And I'm adding you to the spotlight. So that's the question for Varsha, and then I'll call back Elijah for the next questions.
Yep, I think for the partner project, it's twofold. One, it gives you a chance to really test out whether the idea you have in your head is going to be well received by the sector and by providers, because at the end of the day, that's what you're putting the idea up for. So speaking to providers partners that would be involved and gain value out of partnering with you. So I think for us, our partners were our previous clients and providers. So they got value out of knowing what international students were thinking about, especially when they were offshore. And also the added value we gave them was to offer, on top of getting these insight, a provider-specific focus group, for example, which they get something that no one else out of the partner project would be getting. So they get that as a benefit for their institutional loan. By supporting us and also getting the wider student insights through the New South Wales student source as well. So that's really one way we did it. We spoke to them, we told them what we were intending to do and what they would get out of it by partnering with us. So obviously they need to see value in it when they come on to be a partner. I'm sorry, I don't know what's going on with my voice, but yeah, I hope that answers.
Thank you, Varsha, for that. Now, the next question, which might be actually for Elijah, is from Elsa, and she's asking, is this project for non-profit organization only? So as Varsha answered, I think you gather that she's coming from an organization and a business. So Elijah, can you elaborate on who is this project for? What type of organization can participate, whether it's a community organization, not-for-profit, or a business?
Yeah, absolutely. And firstly, hello to Elsa, a former colleague of mine from a previous life. Hope you're well. Look, we do not distinguish for the purposes of evaluating these projects between organization types. So I see you've listed there for-profit, non-for-profit, and what have you. The criteria really is that the organization is a provider of education, or an organization with an interest and focus on international education. So those are really the only two criteria when it comes to organization types.
Okay, so next question is from Akram. Please clarify what are the partners' role like in shaping the project or delivering the project, and if the New South Wales entity and the Study New South Wales are running a project. So what are the roles for these organizations? And if you see Elijah looking up, and if I see me looking at the screen, we're sitting in the same room and we're giving eye contact to each other, just so you know. We like
everyone is wondering what was happening there.
Great. Now, what I wanted to ask, so going back on that question, Elijah, and I see another question from James as well. So James and Akram are kind of like wondering if you're based in New South Wales, like, can you apply? If you're based outside of New South Wales, can you still apply? And what type of responsibilities or kind of like sharing of task and delivery is up to which organization? Over to you.
Right. So I'll go to the second question first, which is really the bar here. The eligibility criteria is that you're operating in New South Wales. And that's something we'll be looking closely at as part of the eligibility process before we then proceed on to assessing the project proposals themselves. Now, the first question was about the roles. So the roles within the partnership, and I think that extends to the role of Study New South Wales in the arrangement as well. So the purpose of this grant is to provide funding for partnerships that have formed to execute a particular project that addresses gaps in the New South Wales education sector. So the relative roles of the partners really depend on the nature of the project. So we're we're looking for the application to really bear out, well, what is that synergy going to look like, right? Is it a partnership between for instance an education provider and a volunteering organisation? In which case, what are the relative responsibilities between those two partners? So it's really about, and what this program is looking for, is different organisations, different providers within the New South Wales international education context, bringing their unique organizational capabilities to the table, the combination of which will create something new in the sector and to fill gaps in the sector. So the relative responsibilities of the partners within the proposed project, that depends on the project and the skills and capabilities that are needed by that project. Study New South Wales role in the mix is really obviously to work with the partners throughout the life of the project, to kind of check in, to provide connections or intel where necessary. Certainly the team here at Study New South Wales are happy to promote the project, to really amplify the message of the project. But Study New South Wales is I suppose one step removed from the life of the project. So in the application, and as you're thinking through what you're going to propose, we're really looking for the contributions of you and your partner or partners. Happy to take follow-up questions on that if there's anything I glossed over. But Lorraine, please.
Yeah, so I'm just very mindful of time, and people might have a meeting at 1 p.m. So I'm just going to go real quick. I know I just want to provide some clarity as well. You can be an organization that is not based in New South Wales, but partner with another organization that is based in New South Wales. So Varsha, her entity is based in Melbourne, and Varsha is in Melbourne, but we've been working with them as well. So I know, James, from Insider Guide, you're online and you guys are based in Adelaide, but that's something that's feasible. Now, there is a question that I found particularly interesting, and I think the people listening in will be curious about that as well. Is the founding and the sharing resources, whether it's monetary or in kind or any way, does that has to be an equal share? So does that mean, so Anne-Marie Bergen is asking that question, does that mean it's Study New South Wales 1/3, the application 1/3, and the partner 1/3, or is it Study New South Wales like a half, and then the application and the partner half? So Elijah, if you're, or even Varsha, I'm conscious that you're, I'm spotlighting you as well. You guys can answer that question.
Thanks, Lorraine. I'm happy to take this one. It's option B. So it's so the funding of the partnership, not the individual partners, but the partnership, and the funding given by Study New South Wales match. So it's study NSW funding 1/2, partnership funding 1/2.
Okay, there's a couple of there's a few other questions that we need to answer. So James, his question was, can you please clarify any criteria around partner criteria? Do they need to be based in New South Wales? So we've addressed that, but there's also, do they need to work in the international education sector too? So I think if we can kind of clarify that, and I'll wait for Elijah to give me a nod or not, you can, we're favorable of EdTech, but we're also very much interested in anyone working around the international education, but not necessarily focused on that. So I'll leave Elijah to confirm and make sure that I've got the right info here.
Yeah, thank you, Lorraine. So it really comes down to whether the organisation, whether you know, other methods of classification aside, can demonstrate that they have a focus on the international education sector or on international students. So what that means is, is the organisation, irrespective of any other classification, interested in the sector, working with students, working with providers on offerings or experiences for students. So it's really so that criteria really goes to whether the partner can demonstrate interest and whether they're active in the international education sector.
Thanks, Elijah, for that. A couple of questions on the chat, and that will be it. So I think we're short of 2 minutes, so we're just on time. The second last question is, we have already completed the pilot stage. Could we apply for the grant to cover the cost to start the project?
I'd be happy to take that one offline. It'd be great to know a little bit more about the project and where things are up to. But really it'd be about demonstrating, if it's a piece of work that's already up and running, then the eligibility the eligibility criteria would require that the application can show that something new is being built onto this existing piece of work. But not sure who asked the question, so I don't have your name. I'm sorry, but happy to answer that one offline when I can get a bit more info.
I can jump in there to just add a little bit. So for us, we had trialed the product, but I think when we applied for the grant, it's really outlining the value and the uniqueness that it provides to New South Wales, because at the end of the day, the partner project is meant to uplift New South Wales. So I think that is where it adds value, whether it's a pilot that's already been done. If the project is started up to really uplift New South Wales, that could be a benefit as well. And then just for the next question, to save you some time, Lorraine, I'm happy to share who we partnered with. So we partnered with Western Sydney University, University of Sydney, and University of Newcastle. Those are our 3 partners. So basically all education providers.
Thanks, Varsha, for that. And there is actually one last question which you answered to that. So the question from, we are going to be able to access the chat, and the question about the pilot stage was Tim, who puts their information, Dr. Maya Viet for UPC College. The last question was from Lurian De Mello, a former colleague of mine this time around, from Macquarie University. So Lurian is keen on knowing, are you able to, are you in a position to share who the partners are of the current and previous project? So we've got some ideas. So Varsha kind of like talked about her partners, about her project was the Ligon Group, but Elijah, are you able to name drop a few partners, like part of AusLip, for example, or any other type of project that we're running this year?
Yeah, look, absolutely. So if you move through a bit further in those project descriptions there, you do tend to be able to see the other partners. But look, happy to connect Lorraine, your former colleague, with some more information if we can.
Okay, brilliant. And there's actually one more question that popped in the chat, so let's answer that one before we wrap up. Where can we check if the project initiatives that we are going to initiate is already administered by someone else? My answer would be do your research and kind of see what's being done in New South Wales or other places. But I guess it's more a question for Varsha and Elijah to answer.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I'd echo that, Lorraine. Just for the, it'd be good to see evidence of the space that you're proposing to operate in, having already been researched. And look, as part of the assessment process for these applications, we're consulting with industry experts as part of the assessment committee, as well as the International Education Advisory Board, who are aware of what's going on. So to your question, we don't really have a database to check all current initiatives. That would be something of a holy grail, I would think. But yeah, do your research at the time of application. So thank you for that. Thank you for that question. And Lorraine, I think that might be all we have time for. So I'll keep the talking stick for just a moment, only to thank each and every one of you for joining us today. Thank you, Varsha, for talking us through your project and the work that you and TLG have been doing. Thank you, Toshi, for providing an update. Thank you, Lorraine, for driving this and fielding the questions. Now, look, we will share this presentation with you. You already have our contact details. If there's any questions whatsoever that are arising from this presentation, please do feel free to get in touch. We're happy to respond. But for now, wish you all a wonderful rest of the day, and look forward to being in touch. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone. And thanks, Varsha and Elijah and Toshi. Bye-bye.